What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Get Weird with me, your host, Brittany Barbieri. Before I get started, I just want to apologize very quickly for my deeper voice today, and I may have to take pauses intermittently just to cough or drink a little bit of water, so just a heads up. But today, as we dive into the strange, the unexplained, and the stories history tried to bury, I'm taking us underwater and not into fantasies or into cartoons, and definitely not going into Disney. We are not touching that today because what I want to talk about is the idea of mermaids. And what if, go with me for a minute, the idea of mermaids was never meant to be taken literally in the first place? What if centuries of stories about aquatic hominids were describing something actually real? Just something science and culture and history later distorted into mythology? Or more importantly, why is this topic so difficult to discuss seriously? Why does modern society instantly laugh at the possibility of aquatic hominoid life, despite humanity, frankly, discovering new ocean species constantly? So, as we break this down and we look into this, the ocean covers more than 70% of our planet, okay, based on what we are taught. And we know more about the surface of Mars, quite frankly, than parts of the deepest parts of the ocean. So what I want to do is we are going to look at one of the weirdest and least discussed aquatic hominoid cases, which is the Black Sea hominoids. And then what I'm going to do is something most people refuse to do, which is apply science and evolutionary theory to the conversation of said mermaids. Not to prove that mermaids exist, but to ask a much bigger question. What if something did evolve alongside us and the narrative surrounding mythology was intentionally shaped to keep us from asking those said questions? So one of the strangest reports comes from military divers in the Black Sea region during the Cold War era. And according to those stories that circulated quietly among naval circles, divers conducting deep underwater operations reportedly encountered hominoid beings moving unnaturally fast beneath the water. So the descriptions varied, but these were like the top 5 that I wrote down. Some witnesses described pale skin, large dark eyes adapted for low lighting, webbed hands, long limbs, and movements more similar to marine mammals than humans. That was a quote. Now, immediately, I know people are going to hear this and hear me talk about this and say, oh God, fake, fantasy, internet nonsense. This isn't real. Why is she talking about this? Okay, fine. That's fair. But here's where it gets interesting for me. As you dive deeper into the idea of said mermaid, many of these stories existed far before the internet age, before viral creepypastas online or social media. And you can go as far back even as AOL Messenger. Yes, I'm older than that. And similar descriptions appear globally for centuries. And where do they appear? They appear in Africa, Europe, South America, Japan, even indigenous North American traditions. So we have different cultures, different centuries, but the same general concept, human-like aquatic beings? No, not for me. Now, could every single story be fabricated? Sure, absolutely. But historians know something far more important, that legends often evolve from fragments of truth. So, not always literal truth, by the way, folks. Let me just clarify that, but more on observations that people struggle to explain at the time. So we see this a lot in history where at the time, their language or what they could describe was very limited. So they would see something and then match it to something that they could identify it as in their language. And of course, what do? Years later, we tried to assume better. We tried to assume that they had limited understanding, but I hate to break it to you, I think they were far more intelligent than we give them credit for. So I kind of think that it's very insulting to ancient cultures. Just saying. That's my personal opinion. And I think all these little naysayers out there that want to assume they know better really should take a seat and start learning. Let's just say that. I said it right here. I have no fear. As a researcher, I just want to point out, I begin to see patterns that repeat across isolated civilizations. And that is where I think all researchers and even science should start paying attention. And for me, that's a big deal. I feel like that needs to be said. And where things start to get a little weirder for me is because evolution actually it doesn't realize this, but it actually makes this conversation far more plausible than most people realize. So we already know that mammals return to the ocean. Allegedly, that's what the theory in evolution is today, that certain whale species evolved from the land as land mammals back to the ocean. Another theory that is proposed, I don't know where I sit with it, is dolphins evolved from a terrestrial ancestor. I just think they're extremely intelligent. I think we underestimate the intelligence of our aquatic mammals. There always has to be some kind of connection. I don't get it. And seals. Here is something I wanted to point out. I wrote this down specifically because this is very important. Listen to the wording. Seals adapting between environments, right? We have seals that can live on the land and in the sea. They have learned to adapt in their environment to live in two different environments at the same time. Adaptation. Okay. That is key. Evolution, my friends, is not a ladder. We don't just keep going up, okay? It is adaptation. It is wherever the environment presses on us to evolve and adapt to. So if environmental pressures pushed on a branch of early hominid species toward coastal or aquatic survival, then why in God's name is this automatically impossible? And no, I'm not talking about some friggin' beautiful red-headed princess singing on some rock somewhere. No. I told you I wasn't touching Disney. I'm talking about the possibility of an aquatic lineage, a primitive type aquatic lineage from our own branch of life. Something that is now streamlined, intelligent, and has adapted to deep waters. Now, I know you're probably going, Brittany, don't lose me here, but I want to explain something to you. There actually is a very controversial concept out there known as the aquatic ape theory. It's not heavily discussed, but it was proposed that some human evolutionary traits may have aquatic influences. Okay. Now, our mainstream science heavily criticizes this theory. And if you ever read some of the articles online, man, they just tear this up. And that's fair enough, because evidence ultimately in the end does matter. We do need some evidence to base some of these theories off of. They're all just theories. And you know, that's the point. We have to have some evidence, some merit to it, right? It's got to have some legs, got to hold that camera up. So criticism, however, does not equal impossibility. We need to keep that in the back of our head. Science constantly changes with every new discovery. So when we look back in history as a researcher, we have to look back at these little key fine points that have happened. At one point, the giant squid was considered a myth. It's not anymore. It is no more a fiction. It is all fact. Gorillas were a myth to Europeans. And I know people don't believe me, but do your research. And it wasn't just one species. It was many species. It was many species of primates, actually. And I don't mind doing a podcast on that episode because I think you guys would thoroughly enjoy it. They were considered in what Ivan Sanderson would have called a cryptid. Not today's weird conundrum of cryptids, whatever people want to call a cryptid is today. Today's twisted world of cryptozoology is not how it was originally coined. And it was not how it was originally intended to be used within the zoological field. That is why it's an extension of zoology. But if you listen to today, it's like, oh no, cryptozoologists refuse to use any science, and it is not any extension. It has nothing to do with zoology. No, you're right, because the modern pop culture version of cryptozoology, no, it doesn't. That doesn't even. I don't even know what that is. That should be like its own thing. It shouldn't even have the name cryptozoology. But if you go old school, cryptozoology was only in zoology. It was based solely on the discovery of unknown hidden animals deep in areas that science hasn't touched yet. And it was these zoological or biological experts who were saying, I'm going to go into this region and I want to be able to find and team up with so-and-so. And they said they've heard about this really cool bird, so I'm going to go look for this really cool bird. And at this point, there was no scientific terminology for it. And so Ivan decided to make a term, cryptid. So, following the Greek terminology for hidden and secret. And it was literally animals. That's all it was. Nothing crazy, nothing. Let's not go down that path. We'll go down that another time. But I always love to bring up the platypus. The platypus was also considered a hoax. Okay, let's think about this. They literally have this thing sitting on their desk. Okay, it's sitting on their desk and they are all examining it. They're looking at it and they're still saying, it's fake. is not real. The gentleman looking at it is saying this is a well-fabricated hoax. It's a bunch of pieces and parts all sewn together into one creature until they cut him open. Just saying. Again, human history is completely filled with experts dismissing discoveries right before reality proved otherwise. Okay? It happens all the time. It literally happens all the time. And the deeper we explore the ocean, the stranger life becomes. We have transparent animals. We have bioluminescent predators, creatures literally surviving near volcanic vents in total darkness. So honestly, an unknown aquatic species is not the craziest thing in the ocean that I have ever heard of. Not even close. Not even flippin' close. And why are discussions about aquatic hominoids immediately mocked harder than almost any other cryptid, right? Well, again, I could circle back into like in modern day science, when the word cryptid it's laughable now because it's like pop culture. But let's go back into the discussion of cryptid as we once knew it in Ivan Sanderson and Bernard Heuvelmann's era, okay? Look at Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, Yeren, Yahweh. This creature is debated heavily by people constantly because why? We have eyewitness sightings and it's still debated. We have UFOs, okay? Heck, the government is now talking about it openly. There's no secret to it now. They've opened a whole website up for you to go and look at non-redacted evidence and paperwork. Hello. Okay, but mermaids? Instant ridicule. Don't talk about it. You're uneducated. This is dumb. I can't have this discussion with you. And that is a word that people get. You're uneducated. I think that is the most demeaning. I almost flip it on them. You practice the scientific rigor, everything that you do, but yet somebody approaches you with your own scientific work to prove something plausible and you immediately call them uneducated. And it just baffles the mind. So the question is, why the instant ridicule? Maybe because the modern image was intentionally made to be a fantasy? I mean, think about it. I don't know. When people hear mermaid, what do they picture? They picture Disney, fantasy cartoons, fairy tales, magic, right? The narrative itself shuts down any serious discussion before it even starts. And historically, controlling narratives, has always mattered. I said it. I'm not ashamed. Right here. Because if humanity discovered evidence of another intelligent branch of life connected to our own evolutionary story, would that change everything? I can tell you for me personally, it doesn't change nothing. It just goes, well, yeah, that's what I assumed. I mean, you've been telling us XYZ, so why wouldn't that possibly exist? And it can go on both sides of the fence. It doesn't matter where your religious standpoint is. If God creates all things, why wouldn't he create them like that too? If it's all evolution, well, guess what? Evolution adapted. So I don't understand this, right? People will throw up, oh, it changes religion, it changes history, it changes anthropology, it changes our human, uniqueness. Yeah, maybe. It doesn't for me, maybe for you, but I'm pretty open-minded to it. I'm cool with it. It doesn't change anything for me. My belief, my life, everything stays the same because I don't believe in living in a box, in a structure that's like, oh no, that can't happen. Frankly, entire systems are built around the idea that we fully understand our place in nature. And you know what, folks? I'm going to say it right here, right now. No, we don't. We barely understand consciousness, something that monks have, they're further on. Let's just think about that. We barely understand the deep ocean. We don't even know an inch down there. Let's be real. And we are still rewriting human history constantly through archaeology and genetics. All the time. New discoveries are made all the time. So maybe the issue isn't whether mermaids exist per se, but maybe the issue is that the word itself prevents people from asking deeper scientific questions. I mean, I don't care. I'm going to go there. I'm going to ask those questions. Even in some ancient traditions across the world, aquatic hominoids weren't portrayed as magical beings or princesses, okay? They were known as warnings. There were writings told of these creatures giving warnings to the people. So dangerous beings was one of them. Watchers, obviously we have sirens. They lure you in, the sailors in, kill you. And some even said like entities that were connected to storms, drownings, disappearances, forbidden waters, like you don't go over there, it's bad, blah blah blah. Some stories even describe them as highly intelligent, but intentionally avoiding humanity, which would make sense. I would avoid us too. It's not like we're the best things on this freaking planet. We're the most evil, the most destructive, and the most volatile. I mean, you look at the animal kingdom, it's far nicer than us. And when we were in lockdown during COVID, let me tell you something, the animals were doing much better. Our planet was better. We are the problem. I don't care what anybody wants to say. Humanity is the most destructive, violent thing on this planet. It's awful. And you can't avoid it. It's true. That is the truth of it. Say what you want. That is the truth. And I know this. And I see this because working in my line of work and being around animals and helping and working within different organizations and conservation organizations and all these things that you see, where's the problem come from? Humans, never the animals. So if I had lived at a time where my environment was pressuring me to go aquatic and I was looking at land and the people on land and the violence happening on land, I would have been figuring out how to hold my breath for as long as I could and becoming a merfolk. Sure enough, I sure would have. You bet your bottom dollar. So let me roll back. When we look at all of these cases, these historical documentations, when we look at the history of it, okay, and the stories of them being intelligent and avoiding humans, I want you to now combine that with the fact that the ocean remains one of the largest unexplored territories on our planet. I want you to really think about that and go on Google Earth and spin that puppy around and look at that vastness. Just look at all that vastness. There's a few little sprinkles of islands in there, but nobody's really ever been there, and some of them are government owned. I wonder why. They say that you can't go there. Why? Why is the government owned? What you guys doing out there? Don't you have questions? I have questions. So, when I look at all of this, I want you to ask yourself, if an intelligent aquatic species did exist, would we even really know about it? Or would they know how to avoid us? Humans assume dominance because we dominate the land, I guess. But underwater, please. We are slow, we are blind, we are fragile, and we're temporary. We only can be down there for a short period of time. We can't stay down there a whole period of days. Heck no. The ocean belongs to something else. And maybe something else that has been here far before us. I don't know. But I'm not saying that mermaids are real. Let me clarify that. I'm not saying that they are 100%. But what I'm telling you is this conversation is far more complicated than people want to admit. History preserves strange patterns for a reason. Science will continue to evolve. Narratives will continue to shift. And humanity has a long history of laughing at ideas right before evidence changes everything. So for me, I have to stay open-minded. I have to stay clear in my thoughts. And maybe aquatic humanoids are pure mythology at the end of the day. Maybe they're symbolic to some cultures or what have you. But maybe, just maybe, ancient cultures encountered something they genuinely could not explain. And over generations, the truth became wrapped in this kind of mythological lore. But at the end of the day, that's what my show Get Weird is all about, isn't it? Not blind belief, not blind skepticism, but truly asking questions, looking at history, then turning to science, and allowing yourself to think beyond the boundaries people hand you as absolute truth, or what people have done to us for years, telling us what to believe, not allowing us to believe what we want. No, we're going to tell you what you need to believe, what you need to believe is true. No. So, what do you believe? Could evolution create an aquatic branch of intelligent life? Could centuries of stories contain fragments of reality? Or are mermaids simply humanity projecting mystery into the unknown depths of our sea? I will leave that conclusion completely up to you. But this has been another episode of Get Weird with me, your crazy and weird host, Brittany Barbieri. And like I always say, until next time, stay weird, my friends.